On the evening of October 22, 2013, two families in Danvers, Massachusetts, reported someone missing. The first was a 14-year-old boy who never came home from soccer practice. The second was a 24-year-old woman, a beloved high school teacher, who never returned from work. Their disappearances were treated as separate incidents. But as police would soon discover, they were tragically and horrifically linked. This is the story of a promising teacher, a troubled student, and an after-school meeting that ended in a nightmare. The morning of Tuesday, October 22, 2013, began with a sense of routine at Danvers High School in Massachusetts. For 24-year-old algebra teacher Colleen Ritzer, it was a light-hearted school spirit event. She wore a purple long-sleeved shirt and black pants, matching her friend and fellow teacher, Sarah Giacinta. To her students and colleagues, she was the embodiment of youthful, dedicated energy. She was the kind of teacher who made math fun and who used Twitter to send her students inspirational messages like, "Every day may not be good, but there is something good in every day." Her profile description read, "Math teacher often too excited about the topics I'm teaching." Her passion was genuine. Teaching was not just a job for her, it was a calling she had always wanted to pursue. She had graduated from Assumption College in 2011 and was already working on her master's degree at Salem State College. Her dream was to specialize in helping children with special needs. She cared about every single student and put in many hours after school every day, always thinking about how she could be better and better to help students. Meanwhile, in the same school, 14-year-old Philip Chisholm was navigating the difficult terrain of being a new freshman. He had only been in Danvers for about 2 months, having moved from Tennessee with his mother following his parents' divorce. This move was just the latest in a series of relocations that had defined his childhood since the 4th grade, shuffling between various cities in Tennessee and Florida. To his classmates, Philip was an enigma, quiet, reserved, and exceptionally shy, but otherwise seeming normal. He didn't cause trouble, he didn't appear to use drugs or alcohol, and he came from what seemed like a stable, good family. His talent lay in soccer, where his athleticism allowed him to excel on the field, a place where he perhaps didn't need words to communicate. Yet, beneath this surface of a typical, if slightly withdrawn, teenager, a profound unhappiness was festering. He was deeply discontent with the move to Massachusetts. He felt isolated and bullied, and was struggling to find his place in the rigid social hierarchy of a new high school. On this day, he came to school equipped with more than just textbooks. In his possession were gloves, a change of clothes, and a box cutter, a tool he had marked with the phrases, "Phil's first tool," and with a dark irony, "Don't cut your arm off." These items, concealed in his backpack, were not for any school project. They were the preparations for a violence that was as incomprehensible as it was specific. As the school day commenced, the paths of the compassionate, optimistic teacher and the troubled, prepared student were on a trajectory that would intersect in a single brutal act. The clock in Colleen Ritzer's second-floor algebra classroom ticked towards 1:55 p.m. on that Tuesday, signaling the end of the school day. For most students, the ringing bell was a release, a gateway to extracurricular activities, sports, and perhaps home. But for one student, Philip Chisholm, the end of this class was merely the beginning of a different plan. Throughout the lesson, Colleen had noticed Philip was disengaged. His attention was focused not on the algebraic equations on the whiteboard, but on a drawing he was working on while listening to music through his headphones. His distraction that day was notable enough for Colleen to take action. She was a member of the school's freshman team, a group of teachers specifically tasked with monitoring the well-being and academic transition of 9th grade students. Keeping an eye on her new students and ensuring they were adjusting well was a core part of her job. As the other students began gathering their belongings and filing out into the hallway, a student seated just 2 desks away from Philip distinctly heard Colleen's voice, calm and caring, ask him a question. "Can you stay after with me?" With a test coming up, Her request for Philip to stay behind was born from a genuine desire to ensure this new, quiet boy was keeping up and felt supported. She had seen his potential and perhaps sensed his struggle. After the classroom emptied, another student, a girl named Autumn from a different class, entered the room. She wasn't there for extra help. She simply wanted to visit her favorite teacher, a testament to the warm and approachable reputation Colleen had built in just over a year at the school. For a few minutes, the three were in the classroom together. Colleen, trying again to connect and make conversation, asked Philip how life in Danvers compared to his hometown in Tennessee. The question, meant to be kind and welcoming, visibly irritated him. His body language shifted, a clear sign of discomfort or anger. Colleen, perceptive to his feelings, immediately shifted gears, changing the subject to something less personal to avoid upsetting him further. Then, around 2:20 p.m., a brief interruption occurred. Colleen's friend and fellow math teacher, Sarah Giacinta, popped her head in. She had just come from a meeting and wanted to update Colleen. The two teachers stepped out into the hallway, continuing their conversation just outside the classroom door and then moving briefly across the hall to another classroom. This left Philip and Autumn alone in the classroom for a few moments. In this brief interlude, a sliver of normalcy appeared. Philip turned to Autumn and asked if she would like him to write her name in Japanese. She agreed, and he did so on the whiteboard. When Colleen returned to the classroom, she wrapped things up. It was time to go home for the day. Philip had soccer practice to get to. The entire interaction, from the end of class to their parting, had seemed like a standard, if slightly awkward, after-school session. But as Colleen herself left her classroom a short time later, at 2:54 p.m., and walked down the hall towards the women's restroom, captured on the school's extensive CCTV system smiling and waving at someone in the distance, Philip was not heading to the locker rooms. He was still in her classroom, preparing to follow her. At 2:55 p.m. on October 22nd, Philip Chisholm, his identity now obscured by the hood of his blue sweatshirt and a pair of gloves he was pulling on, crossed the threshold of the second-floor women's restroom behind Colleen Ritzer. The school, with its 140 motion-activated cameras, recorded his entry but could not see the horror that unfolded inside. What is known comes from the later forensic evidence presented at his trial. Once inside, he launched a brutal and sustained attack on the teacher who had asked him to stay behind out of concern. He first strangled her, using his hands to cut off her air supply. Then, he produced the box cutter he had brought from home. He used it to slice her neck 2 times before proceeding to stab her a total of at least 16 times. The attack was so ferocious that 3 of the wounds struck major blood vessels. The pathologist, Anna MacDonald, would later clarify the medical sequence of events during the trial. She stated that the strangulation happened first, as the severity of the neck wounds would have made it impossible to strangle her afterward. She also presented the chilling possibility that Colleen was still alive, though unconscious, when she was later left in the woods, ultimately succumbing to catastrophic blood loss. Then, at 3:06 p.m., the outside world briefly intruded. A female student entered the restroom, looking for a cell phone signal to call her father saw what she thought was a person changing clothes, with an exposed butt and a pile of clothing on the floor. The reality was that she had likely interrupted Philip Chisholm in the act of sexually assaulting his teacher, which the trial would later confirm as aggravated rape. Unnerved and thinking she had walked in on someone, she turned and quickly left, unknowingly having been mere feet from a murder in its final stages. She had no idea the person she saw was her classmate, and the pile of clothes was her dying teacher. Just 1 minute later, at 3:07 p.m., Philip exited the bathroom. The CCTV camera captured him leaving, his clothing now bearing the evidence of his actions. He did not flee the school in a panic. Instead, he moved to the next, coldly logistical phase of his crime. He had not only murdered his teacher in a place where she should have been safe, but he now had to deal with the consequence of his actions, the body. What followed was a series of actions captured on camera that showed a shocking level of composure and calculation for a 14-year-old, as he began the process of concealing his crime. Immediately after exiting the bathroom at 3:07 p.m., he was seen on camera running through the halls. He then went to a secluded area to change his clothes, swapping his blue sweatshirt for a red one in an attempt to conceal the physical evidence on his person. He then returned to Colleen Ritzer's classroom. At 3:10 p.m., he entered, and by 3:11 p.m., he exited, now carrying 3 bags, 2 belonging to Colleen, including her distinctive Vera Bradley bag, and his own. He had a red sweatshirt thrown over his head like a makeshift disguise. He took these bags downstairs, presumably to his own locker or another hiding spot, then returned moments later, now wearing a black face mask and putting the red sweatshirt on properly. He ran back toward the bathroom but was suddenly intercepted by a classmate, a fellow soccer player, who was holding a soccer ball and asked him why he wasn't heading down to practice. This interaction, caught on camera, seemed to startle Philip, who quickly walked away from the student without giving a proper answer. It is highly likely he was concerned that Colleen was still alive and able to call for help, and this classmate's presence threatened his next move. Undeterred, he proceeded with the most audacious part of his plan. At 3:16 p.m., he was recorded wheeling a large, wheeled recycling bin into the women's restroom. He spent 5 minutes inside, a grim task that involved moving Colleen's body from the floor into the large container. He pushed the bin down the hallway to an elevator, took it down to the first floor, and pushed it out of the school and across the grounds toward a wooded area behind the school. A student, sitting out from track practice with an injury, saw him from a window and assumed he was a school employee simply taking out yard waste. The terrain proved difficult. He initially tried to access the woods near the athletic fields, but found the embankment too steep and rocky. He gave up after a struggle, and 7 minutes later, was seen on camera pushing the bin around to another, more accessible part of the woods. It was here, in this secluded spot, that he committed a final post-mortem act of violation, sexually assaulting Colleen with a tree branch and posing her body in a graphic manner before covering her with a pile of leaves in a shallow depression. He left a handwritten note near her that read, "I hate you all." About 100 feet away, he discarded the large trash bin and the bloody gloves he had worn. After spending significant time in the woods, he returned to the school, his gray canvas Nike shoes now missing, leaving him in just his white socks. The shoes, later recovered by police from the woods, were covered in blood, a silent testament to the violence that had transpired in those woods. At approximately 4 p.m., CCTV footage shows him entering the school building, now barefoot, his socks also gone. His jeans and hands were visibly soiled with blood. He walked calmly to the 3rd floor, opened his locker at 4:01 p.m., and retrieved a bag. He then entered the men's restroom on that floor, where he changed into his soccer practice clothes, a black hoodie and black shorts. He meticulously placed his bloody jeans and t-shirt into his red Nike drawstring backpack. At 4:04 p.m., in an act of cold audacity, he re-entered the very same 2nd-floor women's restroom where he had killed Colleen just over an hour earlier. He spent 2 minutes inside, exiting at 4:06 p.m., and then left the school, still not wearing any shoes. He then returned to the wooded area for another 12 minutes, the purpose of this final visit known only to him. At 4:24 p.m., he walked back into the school for the last time, his demeanor now eerily calm. He was seen chewing on a snack from his backpack, strolling through the halls as if it were any other day. He then interacted with a boy he knew from church and his youth group, who was at the school for cross-country. They had a normal, brief conversation. Philip told his friend that he hadn't received his texts because he was out of phone minutes and confirmed he would be at their youth group meeting that coming Sunday. This ability to engage in mundane social niceties, to calmly discuss weekend plans immediately after committing a brutal murder and disposing of a body, was deeply unsettling. It displayed a compartmentalization that is difficult to comprehend. Finally, at around 4:30 p.m., he left Danvers High School for the last time. But his night was not over. He then went to a nearby BJ's Wholesale Club, where he is seen on store CCTV walking the aisles calmly and drinking a sports drink. He did not have a membership card, so he simply stole a scuba diving knife, adding it to his collection of weapons. He then went to a Wendy's restaurant for food, and finally to the Liberty Tree Mall movie theater, where he purchased a ticket for the film Gravity, but instead went into a theater showing Woody Allen's Blue Jasmine. Every purchase, the drink, the food, the movie ticket, was made using Colleen Ritzer's credit card. He was living out a bizarre, detached fantasy, funding his evening with the resources of the woman he had murdered hours before, all while maintaining a chillingly normal outward appearance. As evening fell on October 22nd, the separate concerns of two families began to merge into a single, terrifying investigation for the Danvers Police Department. The first official alert came at 6:34 p.m. when Philip Chisholm's mother, Diana, reported her son missing after he failed to return home from soccer practice. She expressed that it was deeply unlike him, especially since he had not yet made many friends in the area and had no history of running away. Later, as the night deepened and turned into late evening, Colleen Ritzer still had not returned home to her parents' house in Andover or contacted her family. Her parents, Tom and Peggy, grew increasingly worried. They called her friend and co-worker, Sarah Giaquinta, the very teacher Colleen had dressed alike with that day. Sarah and her husband, sharing the family's concern, immediately went to the high school to look for her. They found her car still parked in its spot in the lot, a silent, ominous sign that something was seriously wrong. With no sign of Colleen anywhere in the dark and empty building, they made the difficult decision to call the police at 11:20 p.m. to report her missing. Meanwhile, within the school's administration, a separate process was unfolding. The school principal had sent an email to staff around 9 p.m., informing them that a student, Philip Chisholm, was missing. It was only after this email was sent that a fellow math teacher made the connection and informed the principal that Colleen Ritzer was also unaccounted for, and crucially, that Philip had been in her last class of the day. This was the pivotal moment that fused the two missing persons cases into one. Police, now aware of the link, focused their search with renewed urgency on the school and its immediate surroundings. They traced Philip's cell phone signal to the area of the Liberty Tree Mall movie theater in Danvers, but by the time officers arrived, he was already gone, having left after the film. While some officers continued to scour the streets, others began the meticulous process of reviewing the school's extensive CCTV system and conducting a thorough physical search of the building and its perimeter. The investigation quickly turned up critical and disturbing evidence. In the girls' bathroom on the second floor, the one closest to Colleen's classroom, they discovered smears of blood on the floors and walls. Outside, on the school grounds near the tree line, officers found Colleen's purse, deliberately wedged between two large boulders. It had been mostly emptied. Her wallet, money, credit cards, and cell phone were all gone. Then, in the cold, dark early morning hours of October 23rd, around 3 a.m., the terrible discovery was made. Police searching the wooded area behind the school with flashlights found Colleen Ritzer's body under a pile of leaves. The scene was horrific. She was positioned on her back, naked from the waist down, and covered in blood, dirt, and scratches. The handwritten note, "I hate you all," was found nearby. About 100 feet away, they located the large wheeled recycling bin and a pair of bloody gloves. The search for a missing person was now a homicide investigation, and all evidence pointed to Philip Chisholm as the sole suspect. The manhunt for Philip Chisholm concluded in the early hours of October 23rd, not with a dramatic chase, but with a chance encounter on a quiet, rural road. Shortly after midnight, a Topsfield police officer who had just gotten off duty was driving home. His route took him along an unlit, two-lane road when his headlights illuminated a lone figure walking near a farmhouse. The officer, finding this sight deeply out of the ordinary for the time and location, radioed the sighting in to the station. Topsfield is just a 10-minute drive from Danvers, placing the boy well within the search perimeter. When other officers arrived on the scene, they approached the teenage boy. Their initial questions were met with vague and bizarre answers. They asked where he was going. He said, "Nowhere." They asked where he was coming from. He replied, "Tennessee." When pressed for a local address, he stated he had none. The officers noted the red Nike drawstring backpack he was carrying and asked what was inside. Philip calmly called it survival gear. The officers, now highly suspicious, then asked him to empty his pockets. From his black shorts, he produced 2 Massachusetts driver's licenses, several credit cards, and an insurance card, all held together with a single rubber band. Every single item belonged to Colleen Ritzer. At that moment, the responding officers were not yet fully aware of her name or the specific details of the homicide case, but they knew a missing teacher's identification in the possession of a missing student was an extremely serious development. When they asked the boy his name, he clearly stated, "Philip Chisholm." One of the officers immediately recognized the name, as his own daughter attended Danvers High and had mentioned that a student named Philip Chisholm had been reported missing that day. The situation escalated from a suspicious person stop to a major case investigation in an instant. The officers asked Philip where he had gotten the IDs and cards. His first story was a flimsy lie. He claimed he had found them at a Stop-and-Shop grocery store. Sensing the obvious deception, they asked him again, and this time he changed his story, saying he got them from her car. The officers then instructed him to open the backpack. Inside, they found a white wallet, and within it, a box cutter with a blade still out, coated in a reddish-brown substance they immediately suspected was blood. Also in the bag were a Vera Bradley soft case, a blue Nike shirt, 2 rolls of tape, a set of keys, a white towel, a flashlight, the stolen scuba diving knife, and a pair of bloody women's underwear. It was at this point that the officers formally placed him under arrest and read him his Miranda rights. They then asked him the critical question, wanting to know if there was a chance to save a life. "Where is the girl?" He indicated with a gesture toward the general direction of the woods. They asked if the girl could be helped, if she needed medical attention. His answer was a simple, devastating no. This confession in the field, coupled with the overwhelming physical evidence, closed the active manhunt and began the long process toward prosecution. The legal proceedings against Philip Chisholm began with him being tried as an adult in Salem, Massachusetts, in 2015, a decision made due to the extreme brutality and premeditated nature of the crime. The trial laid out the overwhelming evidence for the jury, the school CCTV footage that created a minute-by-minute timeline of his movements, the forensic matches linking him to the scene, and the personal items of Colleen Ritzer found in his possession at the time of his arrest. The prosecution painted a picture of a calculated, savage, and sexually motivated murder, highlighting how he had come to school prepared with weapons and a change of clothes. While incarcerated at a youth facility awaiting this trial, Chisholm demonstrated continued dangerousness by violently attacking a female guard. Surveillance video from the facility showed him following her into a locker room while carrying a sharpened pencil. He attempted to strangle her, and when she screamed for help, he began punching her. Fortunately, other staff members rushed in and restrained him before he could inflict more serious injury, an intervention that likely saved her life and which echoed the methods of his initial crime. The trial concluded on December 14, 2015, with the jury finding Philip Chisholm guilty on all counts: first-degree murder, aggravated rape, and armed robbery. However, the sentencing phase presented a painful and bitter reality for Colleen Ritzer's grieving family. Due to a December 2013 ruling by the Massachusetts Supreme Judicial Court that deemed life sentences without the possibility of parole for juveniles unconstitutional, the judge's hands were tied. Philip Chisholm was sentenced to life in prison, but with the eligibility for parole after 40 years, meaning he could potentially be released in 2053, when he will be 56 years old. For Colleen's parents, Tom and Peggy, This was a devastating outcome that felt like a second loss. Her mother, Peggy, stated that she is so very broken, and that she often isolates herself from loved ones because pretending to be happy is too difficult. She firmly believes, "He is pure evil and evil cannot be rehabilitated." Colleen's father, Tom, was consumed by a profound and heartbreaking sense of failure, saying, "I didn't protect Colleen. A dad's job is to fix things. I would do anything if I could fix this for Colleen." The community's grief was immense and public. 1,000 people attended Colleen's funeral, a testament to the number of lives she had touched. At Boston's Fenway Park, during the first game of the World Series between the Red Sox and the Cardinals, a moment of silence was observed in her memory, a rare honor that underscored the depth of the public sorrow. A student's reflection captured the collective shock and the universal lesson learned, stating, "It's surreal how quickly someone can go, and how much we take for granted every day." From this profound tragedy, a movement of kindness was born. October 22nd is now recognized as Kindness for Colleen Day, a time when people, especially in Massachusetts schools, are asked to perform good deeds in her honor. This ensures that her legacy is not defined by the violence that took her life, but by the compassion and light with which she lived it. It is a living annual tribute to the quote from Ralph Waldo Emerson she had posted on her Facebook page just days before her death: "To know even one life has breathed easier because you have lived." Her story remains a heartbreaking reminder of potential loss, but her spirit endures through these acts of intentional kindness. I thank you all for being here. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Do subscribe if you have not already done so, and I will be seeing you on our next episode.